Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of the Travel Tech Podcast. The guest this week is Caitlin Gomez from Amgine, AI-supported, powered startup, really shaking things up in the corporate travel industry. This episode is brought to you by Airside Labs. That's airsidelabs.com. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out, and I love hearing the feedback getting from the viewers and listeners. And please don't forget, you can always reach out to me if you have a story to tell that spans AI, travel, and aviation. Right, on to the conversation. Thanks. So, Caitlin, great to meet you. Welcome to the Travel Tech Podcast.
Nice to meet you, Alex. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to talk to you.
No, you're very welcome. So, I just wanted to start by perhaps asking the most obvious question. If I'm an employee, can I just book my own travel? I love checking all the options, and why can't I just do that? Maybe we could start there.
Yeah, you absolutely could. But do you want to be reimbursed for that travel? Right?
Yeah.
I think that really is where our industry is stuck at a challenge, right? We have so many travel tools at our fingertips as consumers in our real life, right? And for some reason, as an industry, we seem to forget that people have lives outside of their jobs, right? And I sat through a panel last year at GBTA where they were talking about, having to go into the CEO suite and talk to them about different apps, like Uber or ChatGPT, and making it like they had to explain what these things are to the CEO. And in my mind, I'm like, no, they're using it every day in their personal lives, right? Like they don't forget who they are when they go into their office and close the door, right? And
Right.
so I think that is really our biggest hurdle, is to find ways to meet our travelers where they are, but still bring them back into this great program structure that we've created to, number one, keep them safe, number two, control costs, right? And number three, get them where they need to go as fast as possible and bring them back home, right?
Yeah.
And so that's really kind of where the rub comes in.
And so, I mean, you mentioned a couple of things there, sort of elements to corporate travel. But maybe we could talk about why is it a hard problem to solve?
I'm not so sure it's hard. I think it's layered, right? One of the interesting things with my time at Clear and Lyft and even Staples, right? Staples was really eye-opening for me because it was the first time that I was in an environment that was B2C directly, right? And where I got to engage with our business travelers directly, right? And so, I think people want to inherently do the right thing, right? But they also want to make sure that they feel comfortable in what they're doing, right? So, I think that from an industry perspective, we are so focused on the traveler experience when that really doesn't have anything to do with corporate travel, right? The important parts of corporate travel is the things that I touched on before, which is mitigating risk, controlling costs, right? And then layering in what the priorities of that trip or the company or, whatever that reason is that that person is leaving their home and going on the road and coming back are. Right. So, if it was just about the traveler experience, none of us would have jobs because the consumer side can handle that. Right. What gives us jobs and gives us longevity in our jobs is that it's all those layers that you have to put on top of it, right? So yes, we'd love for the customer experience to be amazing and, just go into ChatGPT, put where you need to go and off you go, right? But that's not the way corporate travel works, right? And so we have to try to square peg round hole things so much of the time that from my perspective, it's really just kind of throw out that model and really look at what are the things that make corporate travel unique? And how do we solve for those particular problems rather than trying to emulate something that already works for another use case?
Mm. That makes a lot of sense. And so maybe let's bring Amgine into the picture. Where does Amgine sit and in that stack or within that sort of corporate travel ecosystem?
Yeah, so I like to refer to us as a middleware, right? So,
Okay.
our goal is not to be consumer facing, right? And by that, I mean being able to go up to anyone on the streets of New York and say, "What's Amgen?" and have them know exactly what that is, right? In the way like Uber or even Clear has become somewhat of a verb, right? And,
Mm.
so for Amgen, our goal is to find the most manual, time consuming, complex parts of this layered industry and do our best to automate them and make them as seamless as possible.
Okay. That sounds fantastic. So from your how do you actually do that? What does the workflow sort of actually look like? What would that ideal um, seamless set of steps look like for that corporate travel use case?
Yeah, so at our core, right, we can turn requests from any channel, whether that's email, chat, Slack, WhatsApp, group air workflows into completed bookings. And we do that without having to replace their existing systems, right? So,
Okay.
one of the ways that I think new entrants struggle, and I saw this a lot when I was at GBTA, I actually created Innovation Row. And that was out of my own frustration at not being able to understand what were the new technologies that were coming out, how they fit into the industry, right? Like, should I
Mm.
even care about them? Will they be a thing in 3 to 5 years? Right. I was like, GBTA spoon feed it to me. Right. And that was kind of the purpose behind Innovation Row. Right. And so, from a partnership perspective, when you're working with giants, especially like TMCs, they're so institutionally embedded in their partners, right? That's why you see a 98% retention rate. Is it
Okay.
because all of the enterprise clients love their TMCs? Okay, yeah, we could say that, right? But it may
Uh,
be just because they have these like gargantuan programs, right? Especially when you're
yeah.
looking at the, corporate travel 100 and, you're thinking about, having companies that need to service 127 countries and have some kind of data reconciliation and some kind of standardization across the board, right? Like, so it's so complicated. These companies are not going to fit themselves into Amgen, right?
Mm.
Amgen has to fit ourselves into that existing ecosystem and infrastructure, right? And that was really what got me excited about coming to Amgen, was because for the first time I was introduced to a new technology company that I did not have to explain what a GDS was. Right? Like
Okay.
we have,
Yeah. Yeah.
not one, not two, we have like six GDS ninjas on our very small team. And when I saw how important it was to the company to be able to speak the language of our partners, that to me was what really made us game changing, right? Because from
Mm.
there, then you just have to take a look at where are those bottlenecks? Where are those opportunities to innovate? And then come in and work within them to streamline and make it as simple and automated as possible.
So something you mentioned there around GBTA, and I'd love to learn a bit more about Innovation Row. I'd not heard that before,
Yeah.
but just maybe thinking about what you just referred to in terms of your perspective, having worked at GBTA and Lyft, and now are on the software AI supplier side. What sort of reflections have you had since joining Amgin, um, based on those different perspectives that you've had in your career so far?
Good question. I think everyone comes into this space with the best intentions, right? But signing a contract, I mean, I'm not going to throw any particular TMC under the bus, but how many, startups or founders have I heard signed a contract with a really big TMC, and then 3 years later, they're still fighting to get off the ground, right? It's one thing to
Okay.
sign the contract. It's another thing to actually start to scale and embed yourself within the organization, right? I think a lot of people are quick to sign a deal and say like, "Oh yeah, we've got them. Don't worry about it. They're playing with us too." But it's like,
Yeah.
what does that actually mean? And does that ever actually influence or impact your program at a tactical level, right?
Mm.
And I think that's where the breakdown occurs, right? Because you could have a really great platform, it could look really cool, right? Like I always kind of when I was selling TMCs, back at HRG or at Travel Leaders, right? I used to always liken it to, you buy a new apartment and you don't take any measurements, right? You just go to West Elm and go crazy, right? And you're like, "Oh, I want this and I want that and you want this." And then you get into your apartment and your couch takes up the entire space of your living room, right? Your bed doesn't fit through the wall, right? And you're like,
Mm-hmm.
who did I think I was when I was in the store, right? And like it's similar when it comes to travel because there's so much really cool stuff that's out there, right? But
Mm-hmm.
does it actually fit in your program? Does it actually work? Is it solving an actual problem? And I think that's where Amgen really differentiates itself because not only is it like the cool new thing, but it actually works and it actually saves time and effort and work for the agents, right? Let's just be honest, there's not an influx of travel agents and GDS ninjas coming into the industry ready to learn like P-Cross and GDS language, right? Just not a
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
right? So how we all have to do more with less, right? And really take advantage of those, what we lovingly refer to as GDS ninjas and let them do what they do best, which is not simple A to B travel, right? Or getting a group air upload and, sitting working line by line each one of the reservations, right? It's just, it's not a great strategy when you think about streamlining and making sure you're making the experience as quick and seamless and frictionless for the traveler, right? And for the agent,
Yeah.
right? We want
Mm.
them taking care of disruptions, right? Like I used to work in finance. I used to work on a trading desk. And, I thought
Oh,
that
wow.
was the most like dynamic field you could be in, right? Then I fell backwards into travel and I was like, oh my God, this is almost as dynamic, right? Because we're the only other industry that's literally affected by everything from weather to commodities, oil prices, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
political disruptions, like you name it. You wake up in the morning and you log into your computer and you're like, "Oh, well, didn't see that one coming. How do I manage that?" Right. And it's like, so for the agents, you have to be able to pivot on a dime and be able to pull them to what is the most effective use of their time. But why should all of the other things sit and wait while that's happening? What can we do to keep the rest of the system moving as we're answering to all of these different things that come up on a daily basis?
That's a fantastic answer. I
Thanks.
um, I just want to come back to your time at Lyft because so at that stage you were on the supplier or travel supplier side,
Partnership
looking
side,
to
yeah.
on the partnership side. Sorry, looking to integrate into the sort of corporate travel ecosystem. Are there things that you've seen now, having joined Amgen and running a head of growth? Are there things that on this that the travel suppliers could do better, that they should do, that they perhaps have not been doing in the past, that you've now seen from this side of the fence?
The biggest challenge for suppliers in this space is, my opinion, creating that connective tissue and being able to track attribution appropriately, right? I saw it at Lyft, I saw it at Clear, right? A partnership or a relationship is only as strong as what you can measure, right? And
Okay.
when you start, especially with a consumer first platform, right, you're not thinking about attaching personas, right? So, like, take for
Mm-hmm.
example, rideshare. I'm not signing up for rideshare with my corporate account innately, right? Unless someone tells me you need to do that, right? I'm signing up with my, Kate Gomez at Gmail, right? So what is allowing Lyft to then, or Uber or any, kind of third party technology, what's allowing them to tie that persona back to my corporate persona, right? Like what is in the background that's telling Lyft, she's Caitlin Gomez, she's almost 50, lives in New York, does rideshare all the time, she's constantly on the road, is the same person as the head of growth for Amgine who, goes on the speaking circuit and does all of these things and then comes back, right? Similar
Right.
motions, right? We're both very busy. We're both on the road all the time. We both are using the same things, but who's tying those two together? And then how are you telling the story back to your partners that makes having the relationship with you different from just me going and using it as whichever persona I am at that time, right? Like that's where I think the challenge is like, is there a benefit to knowing Caitlin Gomez, the consumer, versus Caitlin Gomez, the business traveler, right? And
Mm-hmm.
if there is
Mm-hmm.
a value in that, what is that value? Can you properly articulate that value? Could you sit in a CFO's office and say to them, by inking this relationship with us, and especially through a third party like your agency, you get X. What is that X? And is it meaningful? Right. And I think that's the biggest challenge for a lot of, especially the consumer side getting into corporate travel, is they have to kind of jump that hurdle, right? Because especially like while T&E and travel is a huge budgetary line in the P&L, right? It's also a very small portion of the company, unless you're like Deloitte and everybody's a traveler and, that's a completely different story, right? But
Yeah.
usually
Yeah.
what you come across is that the business travelers, the real road warriors, are only a subset of the company, right? The majority
Yeah.
of the company is
Yeah.
just going to work and going home or remote, right? So then how do you get the attention of the CFO, the procurement in a different way that makes them even want to care about taking what they consider to be like, yeah, you want to take rideshare? Take rideshare. Why do I care? Well, if I'm a rideshare company, right, and I want that business consistently, I've got to
Mm-hmm.
figure out what the answer to that is, right? So then it's looking for holes. And one of the things I identified quickly with rideshare that was different from, say, hailing a cab, right, was that the travel manager, if they used a ride share that was tied back to their travel program, now got visibility into what used to be a gap, which is what's happening on the ground, right? In travel, we do
Yeah.
a really good job when you're in the air, when you're on a train, right? We see that you bought the ticket, you got on the train, you checked into your hotel, you got your key card, right? We can find you in all those different ways. If you're on the ground, that's a blind spot for us, right? So there really was an opportunity there to be like, oh, we can shine a light on something that was a huge gap for you in the past, right?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so with Amgen, it's the same thing, just in a different lens. It's what are the opportunities? Where are the gaps? What's really going to add value? And then getting really good at
See, I mean, that makes so much sense to me. And I understanding that customer attribution and joining the consumer account side with the business account side and tracking that all the way through, so that for a duty of care for your employees, you've got much more of the trip. You're right, because when you're on the plane, you're on the plane, but the transfer between the hotel and the airport or or wherever it is, and using rideshare, I totally get that.
So when you're thinking about this next evolution of travel, right, and where we need to go as an industry, right, we've historically been so obsessed with getting people back into our programs, right? And there's a reason for that, right? Like the programs exist not only, to cost savings and bringing value, through preferred partnerships, what have you, right? That's nice. But the big part of it is duty of care and protecting you, right? It's one of the things that makes this industry so special and why I love it so much is because, at the end of the day, we're taking people out of their homes, essentially putting them in a tin can, flying them through the air, dropping them in the middle of nowhere, right? They're going to this meeting in this cold conference room, going back to their hotel, never been there before, have no idea, leave the next day, get back on the tin can, go back home, and all they want to do is get to their family, right? And they're trusting us as an ecosystem to take care of them throughout that journey, especially when we're saying to them, you need to book in this certain way in this certain channel, right? And so there's a certain level of trust that is inherently there in that relationship, right? And a higher level of responsibility that we as the travel industry take on when we're, kind of managing all of this. And, someone gave me this great analogy the other day and I had to steal it. And they said, what is the real difference between, kind of Staples or an Amazon and a travel company? And they said, well, packages can't give you feedback. They can't tell you about their journey. And all of a sudden I started cracking up as I pictured all of these packages going like, they threw me in the corner of some warehouse. I was in the bottom of the floor. I got left out on a porch. I got rained on. I got crushed. You don't hear about that, right? But, our commodity can talk back and give you feedback and tell you, this sucks. Why do I have to do this? I don't want to do this, right? So, I think we also kind of are so hyper focused on not having to hear that complaining, right? But we haven't really figured out, okay, I want to quell that noise, but I also have all of this responsibility and trust that is on my shoulders, right? That I have to make sure that I manage, right? And so that's why I really think what we're doing at Amgine is unique because we're meeting people where they are organically, right? So however they want to book, whether that's email, whether that's calling, whether that's Slack and chat. And, I still would love to see more of that. Like, is that really where we're going? I'm really interested about it. We'll see, right? But if they do, we'll meet them there, right? And then be able to pull that back into the program on the back end that doesn't frustrate the customer by making them input the information again, right? Like I'm of a certain age where I am not afraid to say if I call a helpline and it is automated, all I say is agent, agent, agent. Now, why is that? Right? Like, it's because how many times before have I sat there and been like, okay, maybe this time will be different. And I go in and I authenticate myself and I tell my whole story and I'm hoping they can give me a response. And all they do is say, go back to the main menu and select 1, 2, 3, right? And I'm like, oh my God, I'm back in this hamster wheel, right? So but now it's taken 10 minutes for me to now go back to the beginning. So I don't want to do that. I want to get to a human. I want to explain what the situation is and I want to solve my problem, right? And so that is really the challenge is that you can have all the fancy stuff in the front, but if it doesn't actually work, then all you're doing is frustrating the person, right?
Yeah.
And so that really is what we're focused on is like alleviating that stress and not forcing them to have to do something again in order to be compliant or stay within the program. Just meeting them where they're at.
Yeah, it's in aviation, self-loading cargo is how passengers are sometimes referred to. Not by me, never by me.
Never, Alex.
No. But just back to that booking flow, I love that. I love that idea of that flow, because in my career, I've worked for a few global corporates for a few years at a time in different roles. I had to book travel many times, and I have to say it remains to this day one of the worst user experiences I think I'd ever had. I couldn't understand. I thought, why does this website hate me so much? It's so hard. But I totally get it. You have to have a policy. You have to have some rules in place, and duty of care. It all makes sense to me. But I'd love to hear a bit more about Amgine and that WhatsApp booking flow, making that easy, because that sounds incredible. How's it going? And walk me through that process. After I send a WhatsApp into the number, what happens?
So we then ingest the information into Amgine, right? And we are unique in the way that we actually access the GDS through your pseudo city, right? So that's why I call us that middleware piece, right? And why the agency is so important. We do not go direct to corporates because we understand the importance of that travel agency as kind of the hub of the wheel, right? With all of the spokes coming out of it. And, if I had $1 for every time they said that agents were going away, right? It's very similar to when I was on the trading desk and we started dot trading and they brought in electronic trading and everybody was like, oh, traders are going to be a thing of the past. Nobody is going to use them anymore. And then you had the crash in 2008 and everybody realized they had day jobs and it was not watching their money 24/7. And like, okay, I need to go back to hiring someone to do that. Same in travel, right? Like, could you do it on your own? Yes. But do you have that time? Are you that expert in that space? Can you actually fix something when it's broken? And that's the thing about travel is it's gonna break and it's what you do to respond when that breaks, right? And so understanding that we have no interest in doing that, we know what we're really good at, and that's that technology layer. Right. So whether it's just through automation, right, repetitive motions, taking rules, putting that into, the coding in the back end and making sure that we can go through all the way to the booking, great. Right. Or, again, using AI as that additional layer that understands intent in a different way, right? And I think that's the really fun stuff that we're on the cusp of, right? Really meeting the traveler with a combination of understanding intent, layering on policy preferred, all of the different complexities that exist within corporate travel, right? And marrying that together and giving a traveler 2 to 3 options. That's really hard, right? And especially doing that at scale, right? Because and it's, if we were all in one company, sitting on top of one travel agency, using one GDS and one online booking tool, great, problem solved, right? We know that that's not the case, right? Every single one is different. And it's funny, as we bring in new engineers, we always talk about training. And it's really hard from a training aspect because there is no consistency. Like, you can't sit there and say, this is a hard and fact rule and everybody does it this way, because they don't. Not any two do anything alike. And even within one TMC, you'll have all of these different ways that you service your customers. Right. And so it's about finding those through lines and those commonalities and automating those, but then also being flexible enough as a platform to be able to say, like, okay, the meeting may be in Miami, that's an American hub, but some travelers are coming out of Atlanta, they're going to want to fly Delta, right? And so how do
Mm-hmm.
you make sure that you're teaching your back office, whether, that's agentic AI, whether that's automation, how are you making those human delineations to a machine, right? And that's where it really gets complicated. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck, right? So you have to kind of say, all right, let me just focus on tackling this one piece at a time, which is if I can find
Mm-hmm.
your profile, I can connect to the GDS. Now I have visibility into trips you've taken before. I can make a pretty good estimation of what you would want to do next, layering on the different, changes that are within that particular trip, whether that's I'm a group, I'm going to this specific place, and I have these parameters, layering all that on top, and up leveling that to the traveler. And I think you're always going to have a shopping option, which is what we have as well. So we'll make the recommendations, but we'll always have to give the traveler an opportunity to open shop. Otherwise, even myself, right, going to the store, if I go to pick up a shirt, I will still look in the back to see if there's one that maybe doesn't have a single pull or is absolutely pristine, right? As
Mm-hmm.
consumers, as shoppers, we want options in this day and age. We're not just going to go like, oh, you said that's great? Okay, I trust you. Why? They don't, right? Like just inherently, right? So as good as your options are, you're always going to have to show availability and show other options as well, right?
Yeah. So in terms of AI, and I'd be really interested in your view, having sort of worked on that on the consumer side, partnership side at Lyft, but also in your time at GBTA and now Amgine. The use of AI in terms of the tools to create new products and build stuff has accelerated incredibly, 10, 100x quicker than it was a couple of years ago. I'm really interested in your perspective. Just if we take the last 18 months, what have you? How have you witnessed that change as head of growth? Do you, in terms of Amgine's development, what the team is able to achieve, or in terms of an explosion of new startups popping up all over the place? What's your view on what's been your experience in the last 18 months of sort of the impact AI has had on the corporate travel landscape?
I think we've given people something to talk about. a new hot topic other than NDC.
We could talk about NDC if you like, but AI is better.
No, please tap out. I joke, but it really is transformative, right? But it's only as good as the data that goes in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And no matter how good the AI is, if you don't have a fundamental understanding of what is actually working in the background, how are you going to know if it's broken? Right? And so I think that is really a challenge for our industry that some people get and some really don't. Right? I hear a lot of, well, why do we need to hire more engineers? We can just use AI. And it's like, okay, but that AI has to plug into an antiquated, I love my GDSs, but let's just be honest, a very antiquated environment. APIs work sometimes, not all the time, right?
Yeah.
What are you going to do when that breaks? And you've got engineers that only know how to put or build agents and pilots within AI, right? You're going to get stuck and then it's going to go right back to the human. And it's, especially in a time when it's the most crucial that you not make the human have to do additional work, right? So I'm talking about if there's a disruption and something breaks, and then you've got all these screaming travelers, and then the tool can't work because it can't plug into the right environment, or you don't know how to give it the right prompt to get the results that you want to see, right?
Yeah.
And there's such disparate knowledge levels within AI, especially the agentic AI space,
Yeah.
that, it makes it really hard, And so I think that's the best opportunity is when you understand the fundamentals that whatever industry you're in is built upon and be able to use AI to help you get there faster, but you don't lean on it as a crutch or something that fully replaces the human component behind it that needs to have rationale, complex thinking, right?
Mm,
And be able to make those discernitions that you really only get from a human perspective.
mm.
Is
Yeah.
that fair?
I think that's absolutely fair. It's a leveling up of expertise. You still, at the moment, you need that business knowledge, domain knowledge. How do things really work? And it's in the hands of a human at the moment with that information that AI can be a massive sort of force multiplier. That's
And you
sort
kind
of
of
what I'm
joke,
seeing.
right? Because we've all seen those people that went from, answering emails with like KK or, thumbs up to now they send diatribes, right? And you're like, okay, yeah, right? Like, we all laugh, but it's true. Like, are you
Just thinking,
taking the
my email to you was quite short.
No, but right, like
Yeah.
it's that marriage, right? Like I love to use it and I use it all day long.
Mm.
What I love to use it for is when I want to tell someone to go kick rocks and then I go into AI and I go, make this sound nicer than what I really want to say, right? Because then I get to take out
Yeah.
my aggression. I get to put it in whatever words I want and it spits it out in this like much nicer, softer, let's find a middle ground solution, right? And like,
Yeah.
I think that's where it can be great and it can be an incredibly useful tool, right? But garbage in, garbage out. And if
Yeah.
you're not taking the time to make sure that the output is realistic and valuable and useful, then
Mm.
what are you doing? You're just wasting time, right? 'Cause it's like somebody
Yeah.
sending me a voice note. I'm not going to sit there and listen to you essentially send me a voicemail without actually trying to talk to me first, right? Like, no, I'm not, right? I'm going
Yeah.
to read the
Yeah.
transcript through it, scroll through it, and delete it, right? But that's the difference between me and maybe my 20-year-old, right? Maybe he'll sit there and listen to that voice note, right? But it's like you've got to make sure that human element, what makes you special, what makes you different, and especially as an industry or a supplier, shines through that automation or that something that could be replicated by anyone who knows how to put a good prompt into a machine, right?
Yeah. And I mean, we're sort of kind of joking around it, but if the communications from whatever corporate travel system you're using, if it's sending you WhatsApp voice notes that are 2 minutes long, that's a terrible UX. So there's a grain of truth in there about how humans interact with systems and apps and tools, whether you're at work or at home, that rings true. So maybe on that note, as in your sort of personal travel, when you're choosing where to go on a break or go on holiday, have you used any of the agentic AI travel planners yet? And would you
Mm.
book with one for a personal trip?
Now, Alex, you're assuming that a business traveler actually wants to get back on a plane when they don't have
Oh, I am. So
My son calls me the biggest introverted extrovert out there, right? Like, no, I joke, but I think what's at the core of your question, and the way I like to look at it is there are certain levels of risk And there are certain trade-offs I'm willing to make as a consumer that I'm not as a business traveler, right? Like
Yep.
maybe to save a couple of $100 so I can do another excursion or get a massage wherever I'm going, I may take a connection. Not really. I'm hypothetical. But you know what I mean? And, or I, may be okay just putting something into Chat GPT and having them spit out an itinerary for me, because
Mm-hmm.
ultimately I'm going to have the time if something goes wrong or I get there and I'm like, I think I would rather go here than there, right? Like
Yep.
there's certain trade-offs in that persona, right? When I'm traveling for business, I don't have that same flexibility and or trade-offs that I'm willing to do, right?
Yeah.
It's I want the shortest flight. I've got to be the closest to where I need to be, right?
Uh-huh.
Do I care about price? As a business owner, yes. But if it gets me where I need to be in the quickest time and I'm not going to get stuck in Chicago again, I'm going to do it. Right. So, I think that's the biggest difference, right? Is that, I have more patience for things to test and potentially
Yeah.
not go exactly the way I want to when I am at my own discretion. When I'm traveling for business and I've got to do what I've got to do, it better just work. Right.
It's
And I
just
think
got to work.
it's
Get
just got to
get
work.
there, have the meeting, make the sale or close the deal, and then get back.
And get back, right? People lose patience, right? Because they're thinking about the way they do business and they know how they have to show up in that meeting, and whatever they're pitching or whatever they're talking about better work. So why would they not expect the same thing from their travel program, right?
Mm. Yeah. That's really interesting feedback. I've not booked using an AI travel planner yet either, but I totally agree. It's very different personas between personal travel or the corporate side. So maybe back onto the business then, onto Amgine. In doing a bit of preparation for before I met you, I noticed strategic investment from BCD was announced very recently. So bring us up to date with Amgine and what's cooking there and what's coming up in the next few months.
Yeah, well, we were obviously very excited about that. But what was the most exciting about that for us was that it was validation from a really important partner, right?
Mm-hmm.
They didn't come in, or we didn't start the partnership with any intention for it to reach this level, right? We just said, how can we work together and what can we do? And then we had so much success within the 4 months that was live that they doubled down on us and said, this actually works and it does what you say it does. And also, we really like working with you, which is such an important part of the piece as well, right? You can be a
Uh-huh.
great technology, but if you're a horrible partner, then, you're not going to get that connectivity, that really interconnected relationship that you really want and need to scale. Right. And so for us, it was true validation of kind of everything that we're trying to be in this marketplace. Right. And what I will also note is that I'll brag a little bit. We had already fully funded our cap raise round, right? So it wasn't like we needed that investment to keep the doors open or to keep
Mm-hmm.
growing in the way that we had scheduled, right? This was kind of, as I refer to it, as a jetpack on our back to go even faster, right?
Mm-hmm.
And go even further, right? And so that to me was what made it really special. And to say, like, okay, you guys got something here, and we want to make sure that you have what you need to meet us where we need to be in the future, right?
Mm.
And so that's what it really said the most to me.
No, so truly strategic then. That's fantastic. And congratulations to
Thank
you and Greg and the team for that achievement. It's absolutely brilliant to see. Um,
thank
so what have I not asked you that I should have asked you on this interview? What did I miss?
No, you got it pretty good. I'll say that it's, I kind of touched on it, but I think it's really important, and it's really important for Amgine, especially if we're going to talk on the heels of the BCD investment. Our secret sauce and our specialty is that we are truly agnostic, right? We will work with anyone, anywhere, in any environment that you want us to. Right. And, that is really important to us. We're not just one GDS, a one trick pony that works with one partner. Right. We really understand that to scale within corporate travel in a really impactful way, you've got to be agnostic, and you've got to meet your partners everywhere that they are, using everything that they use. And it's not easy. And so that, I think, is one of the things that I would also touch on as something that is unique with us, and, really something that we want to continue to do in the future.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so how can people get in touch with you and the business? What are there events coming up where they can meet the team, or how should they reach out?
Yeah, thanks. We have our website, amgine.ai. We are on LinkedIn. We have a pretty good social platform, and we are pretty heavy LinkedIn users. So you can go to Amgine on LinkedIn, myself, Caitlin Gomez, Greg Apple, our CEO. We read our DMs, we answer them. And we are definitely on the circuit. So we are probably everywhere you are. And so feel free to reach out and ping me. We're looking forward to hosting our first partner summit coming up, which should be really exciting with some interesting twists to it. So yeah, and we just look forward to continuing to not only tell our message and our story, but to make AI automation and this new frontier something that's tangible and understandable and digestible by everyone in this industry, right? Not just saying big words and phrases to make us sound cool, right? It's really about the brass tacks. How can you help? And that's what we're here to answer.
So, I mean, we have a bit of time. We could talk about NDC. We go into some tech stuff if you want. But okay, we won't do that. Caitlin,
I appreciate you, Alex. It's really been such a lovely conversation.
No, it's just been great fun. It's fantastic to meet you, Caitlin, and thank you so much for coming on the Travel Tech podcast. It's been awesome. Yeah,
if you're ever on my side of the pond, please reach out. I'd love to get together.
Absolutely. Yeah, I will do. That's brilliant. Well, thanks so much for coming on the pod. And yeah, it's been really good fun to talk to you.
See you next time.
Thanks.
Bye.